What's that? We're gonna start doing more Encanto videos? You know TikTok's already like way ahead of us on that, right? Yeah, all right, okay. Encanto, the story of the family Madrigal, their unique powers, and the journey to alleviate generational trauma while belting out some rad Lin Manuel Miranda songs, is a certified cultural Goliath. So, of course, I gotta tell you about a whole bunch of details only fans noticed. I mean, like, unless you hated it and are just like super perceptive. Anyway, the list. Let's start off with some deets about our protagonist, Mirabel, who of course is presented as the only member of the Madrigal family to not have any special powers. Now you'll notice in the big musical number detailing those powers that during this brief shot, Mirabel is doing the choreography backwards, showing that she's not quite in sync with her family. But that's not to say she's necessarily powerless or unimportant. No, if you have paid attention to the narrative, Mirabel does in fact have a power, and that's the ability to bring the family together and get them past the generational trauma brought on by Abuela's extreme expectations for them and allowing them to be themselves. Additionally, as can be noted by the butterflies on her dress, similar to those on Abuela's dress, she is destined to be the new Abuela as soon as, sad times happen, hopefully years down the road. She's going to be the matriarch, keeping the family together. She is the next generation, far more understanding and accepting of human flaws than the previous. Of course, we can't talk about Encanto without talking about Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno. Yeah, okay, yes, thank you. Well, it's my job to talk about him, so screw off, okay? Bruno is, of course, the self-exiled black sheep of the family whose power is to see into the future, something that a lot of people don't really appreciate, despite many of his predictions being preventable, like, hey, feed your damn fish better, or go for a jog once in a while. Put down the Snickers bar. I'm not sure what to do about your hair, but bro, embrace your Hitman aesthetic, come on. Anyway, during the earworm song, we don't talk about Bruno, we see Bruno hidden in the background multiple times, prepping us for the twist that he's been living in the walls this entire time. I see you back there, you pest. There are also a ton of hidden details with the character of Dolores, who of course has the worst gift of all, super hearing. You know that scene in Freddy's Dead with the deaf kid and the horrifying hearing aid thing? Yeah, that's what this movie calls a gift. Anyway, she notably covers her ears during loud moments and speaks of Bruno in the present tense because she can hear him in the walls, talking to himself and, doing whatever he does with those rats. She also claps with her fingers to deaden the noise. Each family member has a reference to their gifts on their clothes, by the way. Camilo has a chameleon since he can shapeshift. Isabella, of course, has flowers because she's Colombian poison ivy. Abuela has mountains that represent the valley in which they all live, as well as flames to signify the candle and butterflies to cement that theme. Luisa has barbells due to her super strength. Dolores has sound waves. Mirabel's mother, Julieta, has a mortar and pestle in reference to her healing ability. Peppa's ruffles are an approximation of the sun, which is also present as her earrings, in case you just don't get it, as an allusion to her emotions presenting themselves as literal weather around her. Antonio has animals, because he can communicate with animals, and Bruno has an hourglass, in reference to his ability to look forward in time, and presumably his 10-year exile from the family, which is just really sad when you think about it. Finally, Mirabel, in addition to the previously mentioned butterflies, has a pattern in her dress that's inclusive of the entire family. Sun behind storm clouds for Peppa, a candle for Abuela, animals for Antonio, her own face, which seems kind of narcissistic, flowers for Isabella, a dumbbell for Luisa, a chameleon for Camilo, music notes for Dolores, and a basket of food for Julieta. Even Augustine has references in his clothing for his daughters in the form of a flower for Isabella, one sock with weights for Luisa, and the other embroidered like Mirabel's dress. It really is a shame that he and Felix didn't get more screen time. But hey, that's not all for fun clothing deets. Did you notice that Mirabel's glasses are the same shade of green as Bruno's cloak? Sure, it could be a meaningless detail, but considering all the deets and Easter eggs in this movie, it does seem like the kind of thematic touch that the filmmakers would include. After all, Mirabel is the one quickest to talk about Bruno and is the one to bring him back into the fold. But of course, that shade of green also has its own significance, because of course it does. As spotted by TikTok user A Tall Glass of Anxiety, boy, I feel that name. The green shades used in Bruno's cloak appear to be an exact match for Disney's Go Away Green, a color created by Disney specifically to camouflage work buildings, under construction areas, and fencing. It's a far softer, more pleasant color that doesn't attract your attention like, say, the orange and yellow typically associated with off-limits areas and construction sites. Of course, Bruno is always in hiding, often even doing so seemingly in plain sight in the background. Considering the connection to an actual major element of Disney parks, this one's hard to ignore as mere coincidence. The 1967 Colombian novel 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez is the story of a multi-generational family and the founding of a utopian town called Macondot, which is home to a litany of magical events and, incest. Anyway, this book is one of the most important pieces of literature in the history of, well, literature, so it's no surprise that it was an influence on Encanto. This goes beyond the obvious things like how Abuela essentially creates a new utopian town, the presence of bizarre powers and supernatural goings-on, or the emphasis on family and the circular nature of humanity. One detail you wouldn't necessarily expect is the inclusion of these butterflies. In the novel, the character of Mauricio Babilonia is followed by yellow butterflies, which are seen as a symbol of love and hope. And as long as we're talking butterflies, there are 12 on the threshold at the end, signifying the number of family members. Now, being that this is a film made of Lin Manuel Miranda songs, it should come as no surprise that we also get references to his previous musicals, specifically Hamilton and In the Heights. During Surface Pressure, there's a very brief shot of Luisa dancing in the center of her team of trained donkeys as the floor spins beneath them. The donkeys go in a different direction as Luisa, which could very well be a nod to the rotating stage used in Hamilton. And heck, if we really want to stretch this thing, the interior of the house is similar in design to the stage in Hamilton. Having only seen that show once, I haven't really placed any additional nods, but I'm sure if you troll around TikTok for 5 minutes, some enterprising fan will have you covered. Out of all the Madrigal grandkids, Mirabel and her sisters seem to be under the most pressure from Abuela. During the tense lunch scene, wherein Mirabel is trying to talk to Luisa about the waning magic, we get a brief look into how Isabella is always expected to be perfect. After she grows a crown of flowers when Dolores tells her that Mariano wants 5 babies, he has so much love to give, Abuela is quick to pluck off the only white flower to ensure the crown is perfect. She then has Isabella sit up even more straight and adjusts her hair to keep up appearances. Y'all realize that while you're making her play Little Miss Pretty Perfect thing, she could grow 40 acres of corn or cabbage or whatever, right? Like maybe soybeans, get your tofu on? No? Okay, cool. Enjoy your cacti, guys. Another example of Isabella being Abuela's favorite and therefore feeling extra pressure to be perfect comes during the shot of all the Madrigal's photos the day they receive their gifts. In every photo, Abuela is standing perfectly straight and solemn with both hands on the candle, except in Isabella's. If we'd had this Abuela the entire time, maybe Mirabel wouldn't have had to save the day. Just saying. Antonio should really take some pointers from Luisa about animal handling. During Surface Pressure, there's a line about the Titanic, and we see 3 donkeys playing instruments on the deck of the doomed ship. For those unfamiliar with the reference, the band on the Titanic continued playing music for as long as they could as the ship sank to help keep passengers calm. Another element of this scene is that the donkeys behave in much the same way as Kristoff's reindeer in Frozen 2. However, I'm not entirely sure if that's actually meant to be a reference rather than just, it's fun to see large mammals perform as backup dancers. If there's one thing Disney loves more than money, it's sneaking characters from one movie into another. On the night of Antonio's gift ceremony, we see Camilo greet a woman dressed very similarly to Mama Coco from Coco. While there's plenty of debate about whether this is supposed to be a literal cameo or a cute nod, I'm not sure it really matters. I can't really imagine Coco's adventures in Madrigal is going to show up on Disney Plus anytime soon. Sometimes a fun reference is just a fun reference. Speaking of nods to other Disney movies, the boot with the plant from WALL-E can be seen in Bruno's room when Mirabel is asking him about the prophecy. As you find yourself watching Encanto again and again, And again, be it due to obsessive fandom or the fact you have a 2-year-old, you'll start to notice a lot of little character tics. For example, Bruno pulling at a thread during his conversation with Mirabel, and Dolores anxiously tapping on the glass at the ill-fated proposal dinner. In that same scene, Camilo begins anxiously tapping on the table after telling his father about the prophecy. Then there's Dolores's which is used whenever she's nervous or regarding info that she wasn't supposed to know. This is rooted in Colombian culture, where facial expressions and gestures like the are common. Another example of this is when Mirabel points to Antonio's gift with her mouth to signal for him to open it. As is seen quite a bit in Disney productions, Encanto features a handful of hidden Mickeys. In one instance, we see the famous silhouette right here. There's also this Fantasia variant on Bruno's wall, and, well, some people say this cactus looks like Mickey, but I don't know, just looks like a cactus to me. Alan Tudyk must have seen something on a Disney lot that they want him to keep quiet about, because he pops up as some of the most interesting characters. His voice has now popped up in 13 Disney films and a handful of TV productions. In Encanto, he plays the friendly and helpful toucan, because of course he does. Good old Alan Tudyk. Antonio's gift ceremony is the first time that some of the town's children have been able to see the inside of a Madrigal bedroom. Now, one of them exclaims, "It's bigger on the inside," which is potentially a reference to the TARDIS in Doctor Who, with that phrase being commonly said the first time a companion sees the inside of the Doctor's time and space traveling ship. During Bruno's apology song, not that he had anything to apologize for, hashtag Justice for Bruno, he sings "Let it in, let it out, let it rain, let it snow, let it go," which is a pretty obvious nod to Let It Go from Frozen, a song that has been outperformed by We Don't Talk About Bruno on the charts. And finally, I gotta thank my lovely wife for doing the homework on this one, because sorry, you're just not gonna catch me reading the novelizations of Encanto. Busy guy, doesn't read much, all that jazz. Anyway, serious fans definitely will though, and there's a few key takeaways from the books, which, technically speaking, are tiny details that would only be noticed by fans. In these holy tomes, it's revealed that Camilo likes to dine as other people. Luisa has a gym for a bedroom and enjoys hummingbirds and giving great hugs while having a phobia of the dark, and that the candle was Pedro and Alma's wedding candle. We also learn various other details about Pedro, such as his ability to sew and the fact that he was a shopkeeper. Now, my absolute favorite little factoid from the books, Antonio, when Bruno asks him if the jaguar is going to eat him, responds with a shrug and "not today." Y'all, watch that kid. Alrighty then, that seems like enough for now. There are, of course, a ton of other details left in Encanto, and if you're on TikTok, you'll probably come across, well, all of them. So, can we finally stop talking about Bruno? No? You're just gonna watch Encanto again? Yeah, sure, why not?
And that's why coffee's for grown-ups.